Okay, and with that, I will go ahead and get started. So I am Erin Lauer, and I am the chair of AIA Oregon Committee on the Environment. I am seeing the audience and loving all the familiar faces. Thank you for joining. Even my old professor Fifield, thank you from back in the U of O days. Not sure if you're still teaching. And then I know you like housing, so this is great. We have this discussion started by the Portland Housing Bureau. The City of Portland Housing Bureau opened up the affordable housing funding to include enterprise green communities where it used a certification. Previously, you always have to meet an EUI and a water reduction target and meet the materials requirements for California 1350. But in addition to that, you have to have a certification that's either Earth Advantage Homes or LEED Homes. And that is the requirement for affordable housing. In this past spring, Portland Housing Bureau added enterprise green communities onto that list. And as soon as that happened, I called up these wonderful women from Enterprise and tried to figure out what that entails and how to get projects moving forward with this process. And we had a lot of questions. And so they offered to speak out for our community that we all have a better understanding of what that entails. And Enterprise is not just for the Portland Housing Bureau. It's and you'll hear more about that. It can be used on all projects, but housing projects, but I just wanted to throw that out there that the affordable housing PHB funding does now allow it. So join us on an online workshop for an introduction to the 2020 Enterprise Green Communities criteria. Enterprise Green Communities is the only national green building program designed explicitly with and for affordable housing sector. We'll discuss how to move through design and construction to operations with the 2020 criteria for projects in Oregon. What's required? What's recommended? What are the most overlooked details? By the end of the workshop, attendees will be able to identify what is required for certification and understand the benefits of certification for their project. And then for COAT updates, the Committee on the Environment, we have our monthly meeting next Thursday. I think that's next Thursday, the 22nd at noon, and would love you to join. We work together to collaborate with our region about finding all sorts of presentations and ideas that are going on. Often the question is, what are you struggling with in your office? What are clients wanting to hear? What is happening sustainably in your world? And let's figure out how to educate everyone around these tools and success stories. And on Monday, October 10th, we will kick off Sustainable Building Week with the Green Champion Summit hosted by the AIA Committee on the Environment. And this year we have keynote speaker Jeff Tuff from AIA of Architectural Nexus. He will discuss the culture of Architectural Nexus, a firm that makes a priority of regenerative and sustainable projects. I know that he works to make all of his projects and within the firm zero energy. He will show through several project case studies, the methods, materiology, and client-centered feedback tools they use to create increasingly and excellent architectural projects. Other speakers include Chandra Robinson from Lever and Jacob Dunn from ZGF Architects, both talking about the community of the sustainable wood industry and getting to net zero carbon through that wood process, and also through inclusivity in design and that process in our region and the economics of that. We also have some PGE speakers, Jacob Goodspeed and Isaac Barrow, speaking about what was, what is, and what's becoming in our legislative environment and in our utility environment to help us better prepare for zero carbon. And finally, we have, don't let me forget. No, that's all the speakers. That's all the speakers. Okay, so moving on to Krista Egger. Excuse me, I have to get my screen up here. Krista is one of our presenters today, and she manages she's the Vice President of Building Resilient Futures. And at Enterprise, Krista manages national sustainability efforts, including the Enterprise Green Communities criteria, the nation's only national green building program designed explicitly for green affordable housing construction. She led the technical development and public rollout of the 2015 and 2020 Enterprise Green Communities criteria, and provides strategic oversight for its certification program and health action plan framework, which pairs public health professionals with affordable housing development teams. Krista leverages the Enterprise Green Communities platform, climate disaster response work, and cultural resilience programming to deploy equitable climate resilience solutions across the country. Krista has more than 15 years of experience leading energy efficiency and healthy housing initiatives with affordable housing stakeholders. Prior to Enterprise, she directed Advanced Energy's Affordable Housing Business Unit, which provides program and building science expertise. She led the award-winning Guaranteed Performance System Vision program and consulting services with Habitat for Humanity International, NeighborWorks, and utility clients. Krista serves on the network for Energy, Water, and Health and Affordable Buildings Advisory Council, Oberlin Enviro Alumni Steering Committee, and the Building Performance Institute Board of Directors. Thank you, Krista. And we have Shelby O'Neill. And Shelby O'Neill is the Program Director of Enterprise Green Communities. She serves as Program Director for the National Building Resilient Futures Program of Enterprise Community Partners, a national nonprofit aimed at making home and community places of pride, power, and belonging, and platforms for resilience and upward mobility for all. Shelby leads the Enterprise Green Communities Certification Program, the country's only national green building program designed explicitly by and for affordable housing sector. Before joining Enterprise in 2016, Shelby practiced sustainable architecture and design in Washington, D.C. Okay, so without further ado, I will stop my share and let Enterprise Green Communities and these wonderful ladies continue on with the conversation. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Erin, for those introductions and for giving us the time today to share information about green communities with you all. For those of you who are familiar with other green building certification programs, I'm sure you'll hear a lot this evening that's familiar. And we're happy to go into any of the nuances about how this program may differ from others that you're familiar with, give big picture feedback or go into the details. But Elizabeth Horan and I will be walking through the content today. Shelby O'Neill is behind the scenes here, making sure our videos look great and helping us answer questions that come up. So thanks again for joining this afternoon. So objectives here on the screen, Erin touched on at a high level, but we'll be looking to help ensure that by the end of this hour, folks understand the green communities methods that both promote healthy, efficient, and resilient affordable housing, learn strategies to help multifamily projects in particular reduce utility usage while simultaneously developing healthy indoor environments, really maximizing how to improve indoor air quality, and then also becoming familiar with the different resources and processes that we have with green communities as well. So if you can go to the next slide, we'll just show you our high-level agenda. We'll start with a brief welcome and overview, and then Elizabeth and I will go over the criteria categories one by one, giving you one example of a highlight in each, and we're happy to address more details at the end. But before we get to Q&A, Elizabeth will spend a little bit of time on the certification process, and then we'll have time for your questions and discussion. So with that, let's move to the next slide. Thanks, Shelby. And let me just share with you some high-level information about the organization that Elizabeth, Shelby, and I work with. Enterprise Community Partners is a national nonprofit. We've been around for about 40 years, promoting more quantity of affordable housing and ensuring that that affordable housing is built to a high level of quality as well. We have 3 strategic plan goals that you see here on the screen: increasing housing supply, advancing racial equity, and building resilience and upward mobility. And our Green Communities program really hits all 3. So if you can go to the next slide, just want to highlight for you all that our Green Communities program has been around for about 18 years now. We started with the audacious question at the time of, can affordable housing be green? We've proven collectively with many of you all and developers, contractors, architects, design professionals around the country that unequivocally the answer is yes. In both the light blue and the dark blue states that you see here on this map, we've certified properties. We're getting close to 130,000 homes that have been certified to the Green Communities program. And the dark blue states on this map are particularly important because those are ones that when they're allocating funding for affordable housing, they're either incentivizing or requiring that housing be built to a green building program, including green communities. So every single year, we're diverting more than $30 million away from utility expenses from affordable properties, which just enables both the owners and the residents of those properties to divert those funds to other critical needs. So really proud of the impact that the program has had, and we'll share it with you all today. So here are some differentiating factors about the Green Communities program. In terms of eligibility, affordable housing is our sweet spot. So it's all right if there's a mixed use or a mixed income development coming through certification, but for us to certify a property or development to the Green Communities program, there must be elements of subsidized affordable housing in the property. But that said, we look at all different types of affordable housing, whether it's new construction, substantial rehab, mod rehab. We have slight variations in our program, depending on that construction typology. We also have slight variations for rural properties versus non-rural. And while Elizabeth and I might be referencing multifamily properties throughout this afternoon's conversation, we also do single family, primarily rental, but also home ownership. And then at the end of the day, when we've verified that all the criteria in the development have been met, you not only receive certification through Enterprise's Green Communities program, you also receive certification with IWBI's WELL program, so the International Well Building Institute's WELL program. And this is the only dual certification of its kind with WELL that exists in the world. But we're really proud of that partnership that we have with IWBI that results in the recognition of the health aspects that are baked into the program as well. We do have two options of certification levels. There's our standard certification, and then there's certification plus. Certification plus means you're going above and beyond with your energy savings, and we'll cover that a little bit later, but I wanted to highlight that there are those two options. So that's the kind of framework and the nuts and bolts, the differentiating factors of the program. If you go to the next slide, you'll see the 5 themes that we're really highlighting throughout the program. So lifting up the agency of residents through our integrative design process, laying out a path to zero energy, emphasizing healthy living strategies, looking at water conservation and water quality, and then looking at climate resilience. So you'll see that these 5 themes are woven throughout all of our categories. And on the next slide, you'll see the 8 different categories of which we use to frame our program. So we start at the top with integrative design, which is how you're setting all of your priorities and putting your plans and specs together to ensure that construction will be in alignment with the project objectives. Then we go to location and neighborhood fabric, which is about selecting where you're going to build, and site improvements, then water and energy, materials. Then we get to category 7, which is healthy living environment, which is our most comprehensive category. Then we wrap up with maintenance and resident engagement. So all of these characteristics come together, result in a high quality, green, affordable home. We have mandatory measures in each category as well as options. And Shelby, if I could ask you to take down the slides and put up the website, I'll just take about 2 minutes to orient people to some of the resources that all might want to use either while we're talking today or later on. Awesome. So we'll put in the chat the link to this web page. This is the homepage for the Green Communities Criteria and Certification. And if you scroll over to the right side of the page, you'll see this toolbar, and you'll want to click on 2020 criteria. And once you do that, you'll see that all kinds of information pops up in that right-hand toolbar. And the first thing I want to draw your attention to is actually the filter, which is at the top of that gray toolbar. Thanks, Shelby. So you can pick these buttons to match with the project that you most typically operate within. So whether it's new construction or rehab, urban or rural, and depending on your selection of those buttons, all of the other content throughout the web pages will be customized to just reflect that information that you're seeking. So, want to call your attention to that. And then what I'd like to look at now is on that toolbar, you can see the different 8 categories. And if you click on any of the names of those categories, you can just pick one, Shelby. That category will open up and you'll be able to see all of the requirements and recommendations within that particular category. So if you want all of the detail, please go here. For a shorthand version of all of the content in Green Communities, Shelby, if you could click on the word checklist, thanks. You'll be able to see a downloadable version of the checklist up at the top with an Excel and a PDF version. And then if you scroll down, you'll see an editable version online. So that's the checklist option. And then let's go back over to that toolbar on the side and just scroll down, Shelby, to click on Addenda and FAQ. Thanks. So this is where we put updates to the program. We don't do this all that often, but if we do modify the criteria, you'll find them all here. And then the very last thing I wanted to show you is if you could click on the word certification near the bottom there, Shelby. Thanks. You'll see a couple of sub bullets pop up on that side menu. And the one about additional information required, if you could click on that, you'll be able to see all of the templates that you can use to help demonstrate how you've met the criteria for our team. So just wanted to highlight a couple of those different resources for you guys. And with that, I'll turn it over to Elizabeth to walk us through, starting with category.
Great, thanks, Krista. Yeah, so we're going to spend the next few minutes sort of getting into the nitty gritty of the criteria. We don't have time to go into every little element, but like Krista said, we'll sort of give a highlight of each category and then also an example from within each of these 8 categories. So starting here with category 1, no matter what the goals of your project, this integrative design component is the backbone of our criteria. And we know that an integrative design process can determine the success of a project, especially as we ask more and more of our affordable housing industry to be creating both efficient and high-performing buildings, but also making sure to be attentive to resident health, community benefits, and sort of all of these goals packed into a tight budget. So we feel like integrative design is a pillar here to get everyone on the same page and making intentional decisions from the get-go. And on the next slide, you'll see each element here of the first category. So as Krista was alluding to earlier, some of the criteria are required or mandatory. You'll see those here in navy, and then this teal color shows what's optional. And for category 1, the intention here for the required criteria is to really encourage a successful integrative design through various elements of pre-design and the construction process. And then these optional elements just allow teams to dive even deeper into that exercise. And on the next slide, we'll see one of the tools that our team has put together to help initiate this work is the project priority survey. And this is a simple guide to help teams align and create the understanding for their project. So this is helping folks pull out both the population being served, the environmental conditions, and other things that you can pull in when you're looking into the design process to make sure you're able to tailor your project. So For instance, we see feedback come out of these project priority surveys that maybe residents have identified they can't exercise, in the winter months. So that can then be tailored and inform the final design. When problems are identified, creative solutions can be put into the final project. And that's sort of how this project priority survey is designed to help teams ultimately identify opportunities in the design process and then integrate those solutions into the final product. We will drop a link to the project priority survey in the chat. So in your free time, you can look through that on your own and ask us any questions you might have. All right, category 2 is a location and neighborhood fabric. So if you'll advance to that next slide, Shelby. This category has quite a number of criteria, as you can see, and we sort of bundle these into 3 themes, if you will. The first bundle is focused on responsible development. The second bundle is focused on access to community and the physical infrastructure. And then the third bundle is related to connecting to opportunity. And a note here, as Krista was alluding to earlier, is that especially in category 2 here, depending on the type of project you're working on, that really impacts what we would expect to see from the project, a new construction versus a rehab, an urban community versus a rural community. What's asked of the project toggles based on your circumstances. And then on the next slide, we'll focus in a little bit on this 2.1 sensitive site protection. So the focus here is to really safeguard land for future generations and also shelter buildings and communities from the harshest impacts of climate change. And in the 2020 criteria, we took this approach through the lens of ecological resource protection zones, or ERPZs, and identifying the ecological resource protection zone elements and creating a map of this landscape really has helped teams establish clear communication with all team members, as well as encourage awareness of these features, which include floodplains, wetlands, endangered species, and agricultural soil. These are things we want paid attention to early on so that they can be treated responsibly. All right, next slide. All right, so zooming over to site improvements here. One of our categories is taking a high-level understanding of the conditions to design and consider as you're going through your site improvements. So for category 3, we're really looking at sort of disturbances to the site and protecting the land and the surrounding area. And a big focus here is 3.4 and 3.5 related to stormwater management. So at its very basic here, stormwater management is a mandatory component of our criteria, and we're requiring projects to retain the volume of a certain percentile I always get this tongue-tied, percentile precipitation event as defined by the EPA, and our minimum threshold here is 60% as identified in 3.4, and then we give teams sort of this optional bonus points, if you will, to go above and beyond and accommodate an even higher percentile precipitation event on the property. And speaking of water, looking at category 4, this is focused on indoor water use. So in category 4, we're lifting up tried and true methods for conserving water, as well as giving attention to water quality. Shelby, if y'all jump to the next one here. So for 4.1 and 2, this is focused on water consumption. So we have teams we rely on the whole building water calculator for teams to demonstrate the water conservation happening in their building. And then, just a quick note on the water quality element. In the United States, drinking water is tightly regulated, but we know that vulnerable communities are frequently still exposed to lead and other toxins through the drinking water. So we've incorporated this 4.3 water quality element to ensure that all residents of green communities buildings have access to safe drinking water. So, all right, having sped through categories 1 through 4, I'm going to hand it back to Krista to walk us through categories 5 through 8, and then we'll have a chance to answer any questions.
Great, thanks, Elizabeth. Here we are with 5, operating energy. We've got a number of different criterion in this category like the others. The navy ones are mandatory, the green ones are optional. And if we just take a look at what's required versus optional here for a second, in the beginning, we have some firm requirements around energy reduction in a property with different standards depending on if new construction or rehab. Then we have a slew of options that can drive you along what we're calling this path to zero. Then we have some requirements that you see in navy near the bottom there about some basics that every building should have around right-sized HVAC equipment and Energy Star appliances and efficient lighting. And then we have some optional criterion around some resilience measures. But if you go to the next slide, let's zoom in to that first half of the category, which we're calling our path to zero. So you can see here in these boxes, the names and numbers of the same criterion that were on that first half of the list a second ago. But just if we move from left to right, we're moving from basic energy efficiency to zero energy properties and then electrification, all the way to the right there. And for properties with green communities that are designed to be near or net zero, those are the projects that will receive our highest level of certification, Certification Plus. So this category does have a lot of technical detail baked in, and happy to answer any questions later on. But let's go ahead and move to category 6, which is all about materials. So we know that thinking about and utilizing a lens about how the materials that you're purchasing, installing, and disposing of in your buildings will impact the health of the folks who live or work there and will impact the environmental conditions of the building. Using those lenses can actually improve those conditions in the property, so that we have a number of different criterion in this category, all about healthy building materials. So we start out by looking at transparency and optimization of avoiding chemicals of concern in the building materials that we're using. And then we have an approach to environmentally friendly building materials, including considering embodied carbon of steel, concrete, and insulation. But if you go to the next slide, I just want to show you a quick sample of how some of our healthier material selection guidance shows up. So you can see, this is just a snapshot of a chart. You can see the full chart in that website that we looked at the beginning of the hour. But you can see here on the left side, there are certain product categories. So we're starting with paints. And then you have some mandatory measures. You have some strategies that can help you secure optional points. And then on the right side, we've got some recommendations about what are some guidelines that can make your material selection easier to achieve. And we've actually got a really exciting partnership with ILFI with some materials to be released later this year that can help your material selection even more. So wanted to just call that out for a moment. But we can go ahead and go on to the next category through our journey here. And category 7 is healthy living environments. So this category includes all different types of strategies to create a healthier living environment. And we've broken it into 3 categories. We start at the top with reducing exposure to environmental hazards. And these are tried and true green building strategies that I'm sure many of you all are familiar with, from controlling for radon and lead to having a smoke-free building policy. Then we get into the middle section of the healthy living environment section. And these are more complex strategies that often require intense coordination with your mechanical designers, but this is about managing the indoor environment. So having mechanical ventilation for properties, having dehumidification systems, those are actually required in certain properties pursuing certification. And then optional measures around noise reduction and construction pollution management, which are just great best practices for all properties. And then we get to the bottom section here, and actually, Shelby, you can move on to the next slide. It just repeats that information in slightly bigger font. So this little section is promoting health through design. And this is one of the most exciting parts of the 2020 criteria, with really kind of cutting edge design strategies included in the program here that really recognize that how the property is designed will impact the health of the folks in the property. So every single property coming through Green Community certification must select one of these 3 to implement. So either active design, which is design strategies that naturally relate to folks either having more frequent or a longer duration of physical activity, or you can choose strategies around universal design, or the last one here is about healing-centered design. So looking at trauma-informed approaches to creating really healthy and safe places for folks to live. So I'd really encourage you to take a look at 713 in particular, if you'd like, in the criteria. And then let's go to this final category. Category 8 is operations, maintenance, and resident engagement. So Elizabeth and I have just skimmed the surface of categories 1 through 7 up to this point, which is about how you design, site, build your property in a sustainable way. And then this category 8 is intended to tie it all together. So this is more of a process category. And it's trying to cull information from the design team and from the construction process and practices and translate that to the folks who will actually be operating the building. So we do ask for certain manuals to be created, and we have some amazing templates that folks can use to create these about how to operate the building from a property manager perspective to a resident services perspective, from an emergency management perspective, and then also looking at how you can track the utility usage of the property over time to ensure that you're able to respond to any unexpected instances in that as well. So next slide, we'll just wrap it all up. Those 5 categories that I mentioned at the beginning, from lifting up resident agency through that project priority survey and integrative design process that Elizabeth mentioned, to healthy living strategies, water conservation and quality, a path to zero energy and zero carbon, especially if you're following our certification plus level of certification, and then climate resilient strategies are all intertwined in the program and result in that Green Communities and WELL certification. So with that, Elizabeth, why don't you share with us a little bit about how you actually pull all this together?
Great, yeah. So we'll talk a little bit about how to actually navigate the certification process, but as a starting point, I'm going to share a short video with you all. Okay, Shelby, it's letting me know that you have to stop sharing first, apparently. All right, here we go.
When you're developing green, affordable housing, you're balancing a lot. And the Enterprise Green Communities Certification Portal has been designed to help. You'll work through 2 phases, pre-build and post-build. Apply for pre-build at least 30 days before construction and post-build within 60 days of completion. First, create an account. Once logged in, you'll see 3 tabs: Green Certification Details, Green Portfolio Overview, and Certification Map. To start an application, go to Green Certification Details and click on New Certification. Assign your project a name and select a template. Not in New York City? Choose the national template. Select your construction type: new construction, moderate rehab, or substantial rehab, where the work area exceeds 50% of the aggregate area of the building. Next, select your project setting. Not sure of suitability? Visit the USDA's Rural Eligibility website and type in the address. The correct template and construction type are critical. They determine the application fields for your submission and can't be changed in the future. Now you'll be able to input project information and capture your criteria compliance. This is your hub for tracking everything related to your certification, but it's also a tool to assist you in the process. You can view compliance, exemptions, rationale, recommendations, and resources for each criterion. And as the project progresses, you can enter new information and upload documentation. You'll be able to track certification points and choose which goals make sense for your project. Once you've submitted your application, it enters a 30-day review period. Afterwards, you'll either receive an approval by email or a request for more information. To revise your application, return to criteria compliance. Message bubbles that are highlighted in red indicate areas where our team needs clarification. Open the collaboration by clicking on the message bubble. You can also communicate about this project through this tool. After construction, return to the portal for post-build. Update your application to reflect any changes that may have happened during construction. Double-check that the criteria you intended to pursue were satisfied. Evaluate each criterion item, and if there haven't been changes since pre-build, simply write "No deviations" in the Describe Deviations text box. If changes have occurred, note them here. Submit, and once your post-build application is approved, you will receive an email confirmation. If you've indicated that you want a plaque, it will be sent your way. Ready to get started? Create an account today.
All right. Back to you, Shelby, as the screen share while we dive into this a bit more. All right. Yeah, so as you saw in the video there, certification happens in 2 phases, pre-build and post-build. We ask that teams submit their pre-build application about 30 days prior to construction. And this is really where you're going to give us the bulk of the information. You're going to tell us about your project. You're going to tell us how you plan to follow the criteria, which pathways you've opted in or out of, and provide the documentation to support all of that. And then 60 days after construction has been completed, you'll submit for post-build. And by and large, this is a sort of cross-reference to make sure all the things that we agreed upon in pre-build happened and are then documented in post-build. So that's how those elements relate to one another. And then Shelby, if you don't mind advancing to the next slide. We talked briefly about this already, but there are sort of mandatory elements of the criteria and optional elements of the criteria. And this whole process sort of goes through the portal there. So as you make those selections about it being new construction or rehab, urban or rural, you'll see what elements are mandatory and what are optional. We ask that new construction projects accumulate 40 optional points and rehab projects accumulate a minimum of 35 optional points. And as you submit your application to the portal, this is a place where you can work in real time and then also go back and forth with our team. So as the video is noting, when you submit your initial application, you'll either hear back from us that it's been approved, or you'll hear back from us that additional information is needed, and we can work back and forth with your team to make sure all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted, so to speak, and help teams get from start to finish with that process. Sometimes teams have extenuating circumstances that preclude them from complying with a mandatory requirement. And we have a formal waiver request process to go through any circumstances like that. So if you run into it, we'll have you submit a formal waiver, our team reviews it, and then similarly goes back and forth to work with your team to make sure we're understanding the circumstances and what can or can't happen with the project. And then lastly, we offer technical assistance both within this formal application process and outside of it. So either by email or by phone, we're always available to sort of walk through any questions you may have or think through a problem you're encountering and what solutions might be feasible for your project. A note here again about the portal that you saw a little bit of in the video. This is a resource to the team, and again, sort of where we house all of our documentation. So it's a one-stop shop for all of your application materials. And then the next slide is the website that we've given us a brief tour of. So this is also sort of that one-stop shop to learn anything you need to know about the actual criteria. You can both look up sort of the details, but also those resources and tools that Krista was noting, as well as the templates. And then we have a revamped Green Communities website. So you can come to the website to learn more about our program more broadly, like these amazing statistics and savings as a result of Enterprise Green Communities, as well as any news or other upcoming events that we have going on. That's all here at the Green Communities website. Krista, I'll hand it back to you if you have any other closing words. Otherwise, I think we can turn it over to questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Elizabeth. So all of these strategies can ensure that the homes that y'all are designing and developing are built to last. They're going to be healthy, efficient, have a light touch on the land, and will be affordable for the long run. So thanks for your time listening today. And we look forward to listening to you all now to see what kinds of questions you might have. Turn it back to you, Erin.
Krista, you had, I just have a question, and then Matt, I'll let you also run questions, but I had a question. You had mentioned when we were talking, is it Energy Star certification for the energy component? Like you said, it was a short, brief part of your discussion, but it goes in depth more. Maybe you can discuss that about what's required for new buildings and what's required for building rehab and that process.
Yeah,
that would be great.
Sure thing. Definitely. So to ensure that the properties that are coming through Green Communities are not using excessive amounts of energy, we have embedded, different requirements in the program. So new construction properties are required to certify to the Energy Star program within Green Communities. It can be any flavor of the Energy Star program. It can be the multifamily, it can be the single family, it can be the manufactured homes. But we are looking for that Energy Star certification as a baseline requirement for new construction properties. For teams who are shooting above Energy Star, there's a way for teams to get our certification plus level of Green Communities. If, for instance, you're doing passive house instead of Energy Star within the context of our green building program. And if you're doing passive house, you do not have to do the Energy Star duplication of like models, but we are looking for that. On the other hand, if you're retrofitting a building or rehabbing a building, not looking for any additional certification, but we will be looking to see that some energy modeling has been done and some performance testing of the property has been done to meet certain levels. So we have a couple of different options of modeling that you can follow. And then we have some requirements around that performance testing to make sure that the building envelope is going to be tight, the HVAC systems are installed well, and that if you are installing any insulation through a course of your retrofit, that's installed properly too. So this energy section of green communities really is the part where affordable housing owners, operators really must hire a consultant to assist with this process because of the technical detail that it requires. But an architecture firm may have that capacity in-house as well.
Thank you. And Matt, I'll go ahead and let you go ahead. It looks like there's some questions in the chat and continue on with the Q&A. That's very helpful. Thank you, Krista. And thanks for the presentation.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, that was fabulous. Thank you all for presenting. Our first question comes from Sam Y. It's a three-part question. Is participation in the green community standard voluntary in jurisdictions across the country? Are there locations where it's required? And what is your organization's goals for adoption nationally? Does anybody want to tackle one or all three of those parts?
Yeah, I can start with that third part and kind of work backwards. Maybe Shelby, if you're still sharing here, you could go back to that map. That was one of the first couple of slides. But for that third part, our goal is for all affordable housing in the country to be green. It doesn't have to be certified to the Green Communities program. It can be to a different program. Like in Washington State, the ESDS, the Evergreen Sustainable Development Standard, is excellent. But our goal is for folks who are living in homes with rents or mortgages that are subsidized and low, to ensure that the operating costs are equally affordable and that the living environments are healthy as well. So so that's our big picture goal. And then with the dark blue states here, depending on what type of financing you might be accessing for affordable housing, certification to green communities may be required. But happy to talk offline about nuances in any particular jurisdiction here, because each state is different from everyone else. So I think that answers the three parts.
Krista, thank you, Krista. That was fabulous. And Shelby, I see you plunked a partial response to Sam's question. Is there anything you wanted to add on, Shelby?
I just put a blurb in the chat in response to Sam's question, and I can read that out. Yes, there are jurisdictions where it's voluntary, as Krista noted. Also, as Krista called out, there are certain regions where state qualified allocation plans for affordable housing require green communities, or another green building program for access to the state's distribution of low-income housing tax credits. But in many regions, there's an option to fulfill like the green building program commitment for the HFA. And then item number 3, just reiterating, our goal is that all affordable housing be sustainable, healthy, and durable, sort of our vision of green across the country.
Very much. Sam, thanks for that question. Our second question comes in from Marcia M. I had the same line of thinking. Thank you, Marcia. Why would a project use Enterprise versus Earth Advantage, LEED, or some other program? Krista, do you want to take a pass at that one?
Yeah, I mean, in some respects, it comes down to personal preference, and it comes down to which programs your workforce is familiar with, so that you can ensure that you're going to have a property that works at the end of the day, right? So personal preference and workforce availability certainly does play into it. I think there are many similarities between all the programs that you just mentioned, but some differentiating factors of green communities compared to those others is that In many respects, ours does have more mandatory items than options. And we've actually gotten positive feedback on that from affordable teams who are wanting to know, tell me what to do and I'll implement those items. But of course, there's still choice, and you can implement as many options as you want on top of that. And then the other item that Green Communities has that isn't emphasized as much in some of the other programs is our emphasis on healthy housing strategies and on climate disaster resilience strategies too. So if you're really interested in those aspects, in addition to the energy, water, site, Green Communities could be a good choice for you.
Shelby, Elizabeth, any other thoughts on that topic?
Just echoing all of that and reiterating how Green Communities is designed by the affordable housing sector for affordable housing developers. And given our unique position as part of enterprise, we're familiar with the specific challenges and circumstances in which affordable housers work, and have insight to that sector in a different way. But echo what Krista said mostly. And I should also reference or call out Elizabeth to please chime in with your
I was
additional
just
comments.
gonna say, I think Kristen Shelby covered the big ones. Certainly with the 2020 criteria, we've heard a lot of excitement about that dual certification, that by doing Enterprise Green Communities, you're also automatically getting certified through WELL. And a lot of affordable housers also have the goals of resident focused and resident health. So it just aligns nicely for a lot of folks. But as Krista was saying, there's a lot of sort of individual or project specific things that push teams in one direction or the other.
Ooh, another good question. Thank you, James. As I'll just read it off. All of the requirements of Green Communities are similar to other sustainable building certifications. The difficult part is affordable land, affordable site development, and affordable building. Do you offer suggestions in this complicated realm? So, James, thank you for that question. Krista, you want to take a pass at answering that one?
Yeah, you're not wrong in calling those out. And I think one of the things I love about working for Enterprise is that there are teams, other teams, within the organization who are focusing on that, who are focusing on how can we bring down the cost of construction and for affordable housing? How can we lift up communities of color and BIPOC-led community development organizations, which have struggled to get the financing historically to be able to build properties in areas that have been redlined? And how can we be creative about the use of capital, drawing in sources maybe from unconventional sources like green banks to fold into the capital stack. So yeah, those challenges that you're bringing up are real, and they're going to be around for a while, and they're challenging. Would be happy to talk with you offline or connect you with other colleagues that we have to dive into those in more detail.
Thank you, Krista. That was a fabulous answer to a complicated question. I'm just keeping an eye on the clock. Oh, Shelby, yeah, perfect. Shelby, is there anything you want to add to go along with the message you just posted in the chat?
No, I think it's been covered, but thank you.
Just keeping an eye on the clock. I kind of skipped over the first set of messages. Kathy, I'm going to put you on the spot in a second I see that you mentioned there will be a recording on the AIO webpage. Kathy, are there any other AIO announcements, or you want to bring us home, kind of wrap up by 5 p.m.? Kathy, is it fair for me to put you on the spot?
I was just listening. I know I don't think there's any other announcements we need to make. I can put the website that it will be on the recording real quick here. So the address, so you know where to go and look for it. Be on our archives page here. And otherwise, thank you everyone for taking the time to put this together, and have a good evening.
Yeah, thank you. And I know Enterprise Green Communities, all of the presenters and organizers here are on the East Coast. So thank you for, or I don't know where you're traveling, Krista, but thank you for your time. I know it's very late there. We really appreciate your contributions, and just feel free to reach out, anyone here on this communication, to me or AIA Oregon or Enterprise about these questions. I hope that we can move forward with some more options in our community. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.